Last day in Tbilisi, as I mentioned on yesterday's video, which I shot mostly this morning. But I'm filming 2 episodes today because I kind of want to get into kind of wrapping this whole Georgia trip up. I kind of want to talk about, creating a photo story. I want to tie it all together because I've been talking about creating a photo story or a photo essay, whatever you want to call it, since day 1 here in Georgia. When I started as a travel photographer, I would go to a destination 3 days, maybe 7 days, and I would shoot the hell out of it. I was shooting sunrise to sunset, sometimes nightlife, because you need to create a whole body of work in travel photography. You hear like landscape photographers and nature photographers often say, if you can create 1 image a month or even 1 image a year that you're really proud of, you're doing well. But the reality is, if you're a travel photographer or maybe a wedding photographer and you do that, you'll end up broke. You cannot just chase 1 single image as a travel photographer. You have to create a photo story to be able to sell to clients. Clients aren't interested in buying just hero images. Yes, they sell, but if you look at any Nat Geo Traveler or basically any travel magazine, it's not just hero images. It's not big landscape images. It's not big cityscapes. It's hero images, and it's landscapes, but it's also portraits. It's also cultural details. It's also food. And I think those things are really important. And when you're at a destination, you should be covering all those things. And I think maybe in our social media world, we're so caught up in the hero image now because the hero image gets likes that often we don't even think to shoot anything else. And oftentimes we're so focused on that hero image that we actually just miss all these great shots around us that would be totally sellable. So on today's episode, I want to talk about creating a photo story. I want to show you, maybe not my photo story from Georgia, but my favorite photos and my favorite photo locations in Georgia, and talk about why they're my favorite photos. I also want to talk about some images that maybe aren't my favorite photos, but are sellable images, because I think a lot of you are considering selling images, maybe already are selling images, and are maybe curious what photos sell and why. So the first half of this video, I guess, is going to be just me running through my favorite 10 photos or 11 photos from Georgia. The second half will be talking about these sellable images and why they're sellable. So I'm going to kind of jump over to my screen and just run through these images. I don't have them in like order of preference. They're literally just chronological. And I'm a big believer that every destination you go to, you should try to have 10 images. Sometimes there's destinations within the destination, you should still try to have 10 images. So we're here in Georgia. I've been trying to get 10 images of Georgia. That would be like my Georgia portfolio. It should never be bigger than 10 in my opinion. But then when I'm in Tbilisi, that's another destination, so I should have 10 images from Tbilisi. I should have 10 images from Ushkuli. I should have 10 images from every destination you go to. And the idea behind that is if any editor or any magazine comes to you and says, we're putting together a story about Ushkuli or Tbilisi or Georgia, that you can hand them the 10 image portfolio that has maybe 2 hero images, a couple cityscapes, a couple landscapes, food, details, and people, maybe 10 images encompassing everything, and they can look at that and go, that's perfect, and just chuck that into their magazine. And that's the idea behind the photo essay. Image number 1. Image number 1 was shot on the first day. You might remember the video where I went out shooting street photography with a 50mm Sigma f1.4. And the whole day I couldn't find an image I loved. And then just as we were about to call it a day, this scene was just there. And I really, really quickly grabbed it before this girl actually just ran off and went back to her family. And I love the image because it just shows, I don't know, it's almost empowering to me. The girl's sitting there alone on her bench in this big world, but she doesn't look scared, she's not crying, she's not emotional, she's just kind of like chilling. And I love the power of that. The next image was shot the next day. This was kind of like the hero image of the trip, and it happened on day 2. Usually I don't think I get the hero image of a trip until the very end, but just the way things came together, and it came together kind of quickly, it just worked. We got Nelly up on the castle wall, really nice blue light, the city below, and this is the type of image that I could totally see as like the front page of a travel magazine story. Not like the cover, but like the first page when they do a 2-page spread with some text. There's room for text in that blue sky, and it just shows a big location and it just works. The next image is kind of this detailed shot that shows the oldness, I guess, of Tbilisi. Tbilisi is very modern. There's a lot of very modern buildings, modern cars, but there's also like this tugging of two worlds that happens here. And I love the juxtaposition of the two in Tbilisi. And that old flea market we went to where they had these old cameras was the perfect example of that. So this isn't an image that stands alone. I don't think it tells a story. In fact, the way you edit this image, you can make this image look like it was shot in 1978. But as a part of the photo story showing Tbilisi or showing Georgia, I think it really works. And it's old cameras. I mean, how cool are they? This is an image I kind of find funny because every time I go through my photos, I stop and look at this photo and I can't help myself. There's nothing from a composition standpoint that's correct in this image. There's a dude in the background who's blurry and he's distracting. The subject's right in the middle of the frame. The light's good. The light's actually pretty good, but there's nothing special to it. But for some reason, I just keep coming back to this image and I love this photo and I cannot explain why. And I think that's something important for you guys. If you see a photo that's your own and you love it, even if you don't know why, be proud of it, share it, keep it, don't chuck it away. So often we're set by the traps of this is a good photo technically, or this is good for this reason, that we don't just stop and think, do I like this photo? Does it look cool? And if it does, keep it. This photo of Jody, I love this photo of Jody. I shot it on the 24-70 and the light was perfect, the mood's perfect, Jody's looks perfect. Everything about this image is great. And this is the style of image that a lot of travel magazines are really looking for right now. I think in the early days of travel, we were trying to capture the local people all the time. Whereas now we're looking for like a little bit of a mix of both of them. You want the local people in your photos, but you also want tourists in your photo because you're trying to promote the idea that any person could be that person in the photo. It's the reason why having a person in your frame in a landscape photo is so powerful, especially if it's not their face, because anybody viewing that image can look at it and go, that could be me. The next image is one of my favorites, favorite portraits I think ever. I just love it. We were sat in Tbilisi eating and getting poured on, and I had my 100-400 on, and I was like kind of getting a little bit sneaky trying to get photos of this woman who was sitting out the window looking out at the rain, kind of looking sad that it was raining. You can kind of see the rain drizzling in the background, and I don't know, it was funny because she kept looking over at the camera and kind of being a little bit startled by it. But then there was just this moment of peace where she just put her head on her hand and looked out, and I just love it. The mood, the color, everything about this image. It's one of my favorites for months, really. Off to Kazbeki. Kazbeki was our first road trip, and this image is, I love this image. We went to Kazbeki because I was like scrolling through, I think, Instagram, trying to find cool locations in Georgia, and I saw a photo of this. And I started doing some research on the location, and there were some good photos on this location, but I kept saying there has to be a way to shoot this photo that's epic. And I kind of honestly went out there with a bit of a competitive mind. And I am a very competitive person. And I went up there and I was like, I want to shoot the coolest photo of this location that has ever been shot to date. And I haven't obviously seen every photo of Kazbeki or this church, but of all the photos I've seen, mine's my favorite. And I think that this is a very, very rare occasion because I think that usually I see other people's images and I go, I wish I would have shot that, or I wish I would have had that light, or I wish I would have had that situation. I've yet to have seen a photo of this that I like better than my own photo, and that's a really great feeling. And I know that at some point photographers are going to go there and they're going to get something special and it's going to beat this out, if you will. But I'm really proud of this image and I'm really happy about how this came out. The light, the mood, the low-hanging clouds, the movement in the clouds at the top. Yeah, one of my favorite photos again of the year. This photo is special to me. This was when Greg and I were in Tbilisi, back in Tbilisi, up shooting a sunset, hopefully, over Tbilisi, but got rained out. And this family took us in to keep us out of the rain, and they fed us watermelon and tea, and they were just the nicest people ever. And this photo's a good photo. It's got a great mood to it. It's fun. But for me, it's more special than anybody else viewing it because I'll never forget this guy and his kid and his son and his daughter. I will never forget them. And when I look at this image, it's just really special to me. And I think that so often we do get caught up in this need to get the travel photos that we forget to take images that are kind of like snapshots that remind us of the locations we've traveled to and the experiences we've had. So this photo, though it's maybe not as good or mind-blowing or as impressive as the last image of Kazbeki, to me this photo is just as valuable. Kutaisi. And I like this image of Kutaisi, and in fact the more I see it, the more I like it. I struggled in Kutaisi to find a photo. And you might remember we kind of ran all over, we were at a cafe, and I was struggling to find a photo. And at the end, I'm really happy with how this photo came out. And I think it's the type of image that promotes the idea that Georgia isn't just about Tbilisi and the mountains, that there's other cities that are worth shooting and worth photographing and worth seeing. Also in Kutaisi, this is an image I was actually going to share in my images that'll sell section. Because as you'll see in that section, photos that sell tend to be photos that have a lot of dead space or that can almost be used as two images. So this is almost two images. You have the right side, which is the tower, and then you have the left side, which is the bench and the wall. And this wall could be used for text space. I like the image. I really do like the image. I think it's one of my favorites. Ushguli here. This image, yeah, I think that anybody could have taken this image because it was just such an incredible place. But I am really proud of myself on this image for the composition. You guys might remember in Patagonia, I felt like I had this revolution, or after Patagonia, that I was starting to see compositions. I was starting to see how the world shapes our eye and how we need to kind of look at the little details. Before Patagonia, I think I was just finding cool things and shooting them. Whereas Patagonia really forced me to take one step to my right and it'll be better. And this was a classic case of that. We were shooting, 100 feet down, and we decided let's walk up to see if we can get a slightly better angle. And we came up with this. And as great as the light is and the situation, what I love about this photo is just the way it's shaped together. You've got the two kind of mini peaks just to the top left of the church tower and to the top right. And the church kind of fits right between the two of them and then has that beautiful leading line behind it to the mountains. So from a composition standpoint, I feel like this is almost like proof that I'm starting to get it. I'm starting to take things to a next level. Again, I like this photo because of the situation, and I like this photo about how we used the situation. It was moody, it was dark, there was just thunder showers, the weather wasn't ideal for photography, but we made it work, and I made an image that's moody and kind of shows the feeling of that remote village that we were in Ushguli. And this is an image from this morning. At the end of the day, 4-minute exposure. I left a lot of dead space in the sky because this is the type of image that will sell because there's enough room to put text in or to put some sort of other graphic in the top of. And if you're trying to sell images, that's really, really important. And that's what I'm going to get into now. I love my images from Georgia. I only showed you guys a snapshot of the images. I kept 180 images from Georgia. And that might seem like very few to some of you. For me, that's a lot. And that is because I was shooting more street and more portraits and more food and stuff like that. But I am very, very happy with the images I got in Georgia. I'm happy with the way I shot it. I'm excited potentially to come back and find new places because it's just such a photogenic country. Let's jump over to these other images, and I kind of want to talk about what sells and why. So this first image is a very basic photo shot in Tbilisi of an artist and a guy looking at the artist. This is the type of image that, for whatever reason, editorial loves to buy up. Magazines love buying up images like this, and I think it's just because it shows the busyness. It shows the artist on the street. It shows a person who's obviously a tourist looking at it. and it's just a good filler image. This is never going to be like a 2-page spread. This is never going to be a hero image, but it's a nice image to just fill in the details, to show something other than the big hero images in a magazine spread. So images like this sell. Magazine, newspaper. If there's like a newspaper article somebody's putting out about art in Tbilisi, they might buy an image like this. This image of Jody holding up her phone on the Peace Bridge will sell like crazy. And it's good light, it's good mood, it's a person in the frame that really could be anybody. They're holding up a phone, taking a picture, which is what the vast majority of people shoot pictures on. I know us photographers think that photographers only take pictures with big cameras, but most people use their phones these days. And there's this dead space, this big open space that they could put text in as a buyer, or they could just leave it and create this big banner image. So that image, if I ever get around to putting my images onto the stocks, like I'm way behind on, that image will sell like crazy. A food image. Food images sell like crazy, but they don't sell if it's just the food. They kind of have to have some semblance of a person or a story behind them. So in this image, Nellie's got her big camera out. I think she's shooting the 5D Mark III there. So having the food there, the typical Georgian food, and then having a person in the background taking a photo, that's a sellable image. It tells more of a story than just here's food. It's here's tourists about to enjoy Georgian food. And yeah, those images sell. That being said, the focus is right in the middle of the plate, and usually food buyers tend to prefer the focus to be right on the front. But I think it's a minor detail. Big cityscapes. Even though this image is definitely not one of my favorites, it's way too blue, it's way too late in the evening, it's just too blue and yellow for me. And yeah, I'm not a fan. This image will sell like crazy. In travel, I don't think anything sells better than the big cityscapes. And if there's not a lot of cityscape shot of a destination, like I don't think there are of Tbilisi, actually I know there aren't because I've scouted through websites, stock websites like Shutterstock and Tandem Stock and stuff like that to see if there is. This image will sell if it goes on there because there isn't a lot of competition. And that's another reason why it's important not to just keep going back to the same destinations over and over again, or destinations that everybody shoots, because it's much easier to sell images of a destination if people aren't shooting it as well. Some of my highest selling images of all time on stock, they're from destinations nobody else shoots. This is another image, much like the street art image, that will sell like crazy for editorial for the exact same reasons. It shows a street, it shows busyness. It's a good photo, but not a mind-blowing photo. It's just a photo that would fill space within a magazine article really, really well, or a newspaper article really, really well. Next image is kind of funny because it's just, it looks like a snapshot because it really is. But it's the type of image that sells like crazy. It's just a photo of a statue with some paintings in the background, and it's got a bunch of dead space that you could put a text box in there. But I'm telling you, images like this, even if they seem simple, and even if they are simple, they sell like crazy. Like I mentioned about the big blue cityscape, this image of the Peace Bridge will sell as well. In fact, I know for a fact if I was to chuck this on Shutterstock right now, by the end of the day, it would have at least one sale. It's not a great image, but there's not a lot of good images of this out there on the web right now. I've searched them, I've looked through them. They're not that good. So there's not a lot of competition for one, and two, this is a decent photo. So this image will sell. Again, cityscapes and architecture do much better than you think. This image in Kazbegi, again, you might look at it and think, oh, there's way too much empty space, dead space on the left side of the image. But if you're selling images, you have to think about the buyer. And the buyer in this case is probably going to be either commercial or like a magazine. And they're gonna need to put text somewhere. So if you fill the frame with too much stuff, there's no room for the text. So by leaving this big space empty, there's room for a text box or some writing or a logo or just something. You have to imagine it from the buyer's perspective. If the buyer is Georgian Airways, for example, which I don't even know if Georgian Airways exists, but if they do and they want to buy this image, they might want to put their logo here and then the flight deals and flight prices somewhere. And that's the type of image that sells for that. If you're a magazine, they might want to put a big white text box somewhere here with a writing over it. and then leave the other side totally open. So think about who's buying the images when you take photos. This image is a great example again to shoot, just take pictures. Because this was the time that Greg and I went up to the castle, found out the castle was closed, so we went down and I was like, we just have to make a photo. And this photo will sell. It's very Georgian looking in that you've got that very typical cathedral or church tower. And then you've also got like a cafe in the foreground, and it kind of just works. There's nothing special to this image, but it is the type of image that sells as long as it's sharp. And finally, another, I guess, cityscape. This is actually the composite I shot this morning, and I'm not really a massive fan of it. I think it looks a little bit monotone, but this image will sell. This could be that same sort of hero image that a magazine would use at the start of a story about Tbilisi or a story about Georgia or a story about the Caucasus with a title and all of that. Again, you need blank space somewhere in your image for people to put text. That's the biggest thing if you're trying to sell images. Selling images isn't about creating the best photo. It's not about creating the most visually appealing photo. It's about creating images that the buyers can actually use. So I hope that kind of gives you a bit of an idea of the difference between creating images that you love for your reasons and images that you can sell. And trying to put the two of them together at the end of the day, I think is always kind of fun. That wraps Georgia up. I cannot believe it. There will definitely be a tour here in Georgia, unless something political happens, in 2020, I think. And I'm not going to announce anything for the Georgia trip until like 2019 because it's just so far away. But there definitely will be an adventure, photography, hiking, camping trip here in Georgia. It's just too cool of a country not to do. As for what's coming next, I guess tune in tomorrow and find out. I'll see you there. Peace.